Good morning, YouTube. It is 10 a.m. in the great state of Texas, and today we're going to be doing another epoxy bowl, but we're going to be doing it a little bit different. Same from last week, but just slightly different. So usually what I use are like mica powders to kind of color the resin in the epoxy, but in today's video we're going to end up using ink instead of mica powder, which is a little bit different, which is going to kind of get a little cooler effect, I think. So all we're doing here is mixing up a couple of ounces of epoxy, and then you can see here we have 3 different colored dyes. One's an orange, one's a brighter red, and one is this kind of cool blue looking color. So I've learned over the years, pour the epoxy in shallower depths. So what we're doing here is just mixing up a couple of resin cups. We're going to mix the first 2 colors together, and then we're going to put that in the pressure pot for about 4.5 hours and see what we kind of get. I really like this blue. It's been a very long time since I've used these inks. They've been just sitting in one of my tubs for quite a bit, and had to get the dust off of them, mix it up a little bit, and it said red on the actual bottle itself, and the camera kind of really doesn't do it justice, but it's more like a brighter orange than it is a red with some of these. But what we're going to do is get a base layer down and then throw that in the pressure pot for about 4.5 hours and see what we kind of get with this first initial layer. If you go back and watch some of my really old videos, I used to just do the entire pour in just one sitting and just 4.5 hours later in the pressure pot, and it would crack the resin. Most of this resin that I use is tabletop resin, which is not designed for like deep pours and things, and that can be problematic. You'll end up getting a lot of cracks, and a lot of just the epoxy just doesn't mix well when you do that. So if you end up doing this, do this in like shallower type presentations. It's just a little bit better when you're mixing that together. So 4.5 hours later, I'm preparing to do the second pour of the epoxy, doing a lot more blue, trying to brighten that up a little bit, and then do the brighter red and then the brighter orange here. You can see the camera kind of contrasts those as a little bit better, but this is what 4.5 hours in the pressure pot looks like. You can see that cool ink type of effect, which I think looks really cool. So I go ahead and add the majority of the blue first, and then I come back and then just add the red and then the orange and just try to get like a cool little swirl effect from it. And it takes pretty well. I'm not really worried about it mixing as much as I just want to have more of a like a see-through type of effect with it, which I think is going to work really well with this one. But 4.5 hours later, a couple of days later, about a week, this is what it looks like. And you can see it's not too deep. It's very shallow for a majority of what we do, but man, that looks really cool. It's like a big glob of jello essentially, but I really like how this looks. You can see the reds and the blues, and it mixes together, and you can see through it as well. I really like this like stained glass type of effect. So here we are. We're going to go ahead and put our waste block on there. Don't be stingy with your hot glue. I say that with every project. You want to make sure that that's on there nice and tight, and then come around and seal the edges of it so it doesn't come flying off the lathe and hitting you in the face. And we've gotten really good about using our tools here to build guide holes and put the faceplate on there. I think that works a lot better. Some people just go ahead and just drill it into the epoxy, but if you watch my videos from last year, I had so many issues with just drilling into epoxy. This is the technique I like to use. I think this is a little bit more effective. So we're going to go ahead and throw that on there, and in spite of this not being a very big piece, it's bigger than most of our pieces. It's not centered very well, and you are about to see what happens when you try to use epoxy and you don't center things right. You can see the wobble on there, and there's about to be a catastrophic failure, obviously. And here it comes in just a little bit. I'm just working it, trying to get everything centered, and then boom! You can see that. Did you see that? It just kind of just completely scared the hell out of me. I stopped the lathe. A big chunk of the edge comes off of it, and this giant shard comes like burling at my face, just like, oh my god, I almost died and lost an eye. That's why it's so damn important to wear your safety equipment. And you can just see the giant chunk that came out of that. So I'm like, all right, well, things are not going our way so far. So just like all the other projects, you just gotta work the problem. So I restart the lathe and I just start working from the bottom and then working our way to the headstock. And thank God I was wearing my safety equipment. I don't know what it is about the edge of the bowl near the headstock that just always does that. It scares the hell out of me every time I do it. So ended up just trying to get everything into a nice cylindrical shape. That's what we're trying to do here. And just death grip on the chisels, thinking, oh my God, please don't let that happen again. Because when it happens to you, and in spite of me doing this for 6 years and having a lot of experience working with epoxy, sometimes it just catches, and no matter how careful I am, I just end up having those kinds of issues. So don't be frustrated if this happens to you. I've been doing this for 6 years now almost, and I still have the same problems. But you just work through the problems mostly. But we get everything down to a nice cylindrical shape. Once you take off a lot of that material, it balances it out so you don't get a lot of vibration. So once I got that work through, now we're just going to go ahead and make our mortise here. Try not to go too deep with it so we can flip it over and start the actual gouging portion of it. And from now on, from this point on, there's not really a lot of other problems, but anytime you start a project and you kind of have that issue with things flying off the lathe like that, it kind of scares you a little bit. So the rest of the project, I'm just kind of just being really, really careful. But getting the faceplate off, mortise is made, and then just going to go ahead and pop this off here. I haven't been doing that with a majority of the projects, but I think that's just working out really well. So that pops off, no issues there. And then just flattening the face of this before we actually start the gouging portion of it here. Sorry about the camera work there. Obviously a lot of shavings and everything just kind of flying all over the camera lens there. But you can see there's a little bit of wobble, nothing too catastrophic. And now we're going to start the gouging portion of it here. Did a majority of the work with the larger carbide head, and then just finished it up with the smaller carbide as well. But really took our time here, just kind of going really shallow with each pass. Great thing again about working with epoxy in the summer in the state of Texas is that it's 90 degrees in my workshop at like 10 o'clock in the morning when I'm doing this project, and it just kind of melts through the epoxy. So I think it works a little bit better doing these epoxy projects in the summer, because it just seems to be a little bit easier on the chisels. But I'm cleaning up the workbenches we're going through. You can see there we're just getting awesome shavings, spraying all over the wall there. And the gouging, for the most part, is going relatively well. Not a whole lot of issues here. But still being mindful that I almost died with a shard hitting me in the face, and I'm just really taking my time with it. And I think that's mostly what you want to do when you have something like that. Just really just take your time and just really go nice and slow. But working the edge here, going relatively well. I'm just having to start and stop the lathe a couple of times to tighten up the chuck jaws. With a bigger piece like that, I tend to get a little bit of vibration that vibrates off of the actual lathe itself, or the chuck jaws I should say, when I have the piece on there. But starting and stopping, and then just trying to get a good gauge of where I'm at depth wise, and then just deciding when to call it. But overall, pretty happy with the shape of the bowl. There's all of the shavings with just this one project, and really cool colors. Even before we sanded it, really cool colors. I was like, all right, cool, we're gonna sand this, polish it up, and it's gonna look really, really good. So at this point, I'm pretty happy with where we're at. Not too much of a mess, just gotta get this cleaned up. But in typical fashion, I'm not happy, and I get a little bit more greedy, come back, and then I start just trying to do some finishing work with it a little bit. And at this point, I'm kind of nervous because I'm going to end up cracking the bowl. Every time I stop and start and I think I'm done and I'm not done, something happens. But in that instance, everything worked out really good. So gave that the good old thumbs up. So I'm good to go. So then we start our favorite part, which is sanding, going from 340. And in this one, we just went up to 800 grit, and then we're going to just do our micro mesh and polish it up really good. But sanding's where you make your money, so we spent quite a bit of time doing that, and that's just part of working with the epoxy. But here we are finishing up the micro mesh, went through all of them, and polished it up really good. I really like how this turned out. A lot of friction, you can get a little bit of the wobble with the bowl there, but overall, pretty happy with how this turns out. And then we're just going to hit it with some wood wax oil and then you can just really see the colors, the bleeding coming through those ink dyes. We are definitely going to do something like this for next week's project as well. So looking forward to kind of doing more of these projects in the future, but really like how this looks. You get like a really cool stained glass type of effect. So overall, other than almost dying in the beginning of the video, overall pretty happy with how this turned out. But I think this is one of our better projects. Haven't done I'm going to start doing some larger projects in the future just like this. No lid for this one, but overall pretty happy how it turned out. So hope you guys liked it, hope you got something out of it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Alright, peace. Alright, so project is done, and this is what we came up with. It looks really cool. The see-through, I really like that tie-dye kind of effect. I think that makes this look really good. It's polished up really nice. You can see all the little imperfections in some of them, but I like that like glass, ink, like tie-dye kind of effect. I think that makes it look really cool. And I didn't die, as you guys saw from the beginning of the video. This giant bastard, you know, imagine, this is why you need to wear your safety equipment. Imagine this going to the eye, the cheek, anywhere in the neck, anywhere. Holy shit. Wear your safety equipment, people. That is sharp. That will fuck you up. But overall, we survived it. Project's done. Glad it's finished. It's 1,000 degrees here in Texas. I'm going to go cut the grass now. So hope you guys liked it. Hope you got something out of it. And wear your safety equipment, people. It's super serious. All right, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.